Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in my series reading The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Without further ado, returning to The Adventures of Tom Sawyer as read by Lord Naren White. The boys were there that night. About the appointed time, they sat in the shadow waiting. It was a lonely place and an hour made solemn by old traditions. Spirits whispered in the rustling leaves and ghosts lurked in the murky nooks. The deep baying of a hound floated up out of the distance, and an owl answered with his sepulchral note. The boys were subdued by these solemnities, and talked little. By and by they judged that 12 had come. They marked where the shadow fell, and began to dig. Their hopes commenced to rise, their interest grew stronger, and their industry kept pace with it. The hole deepened, and still deepened, but every time their hearts jumped to hear the pick strike upon something, they only suffered a new disappointment. It was only a stone or a chunk. At last Tom said, "It ain't any use, Huck. We're wrong again." "Well, but we can't be wrong. We spotted the shadow to a dot." "I know it, but then there's another thing." "What's that?" "Why, we only guessed at the time. Like enough it was too late or too early." Huck dropped his shovel. "That's it," said he. "That's the very trouble. We got to give this one up. We can't ever tell the right time, and besides, this kind of thing's too awful. Here at this time of night, with witches and ghosts a fluttering around so, I feel as if something's behind me all the time, and I'm afeard to turn around, because maybe there's others in front awaiting for a chance. I've been creeping all over, ever since I got here." "Well, I've been pretty much so, too, Huck. They most always put in a dead man, where they bury a treasure under a tree to look out for it." "Lordy." "Yes, they do. I've always heard that. Tom, I don't like to fool around much when there's dead people. A body's bound to get in trouble with them, sure. I don't like to stir 'em up either. Suppose this one here was to stick his skull out and say something. Don't, Tom. It's awful." "Well, it just is, Huck. I don't feel comfortable a bit." "Say, Tom, let's give this place up and try somewheres else." "All right. I reckon we better. What'll it be?" Tom considered a while and then said, "The haunted house. That's it." "Blame it. I don't like haunted houses. Tom, why, they're a darn sight worse than dead people. Dead people might talk, maybe, but they don't come sliding around in a shroud when you ain't noticing, and peep over your shoulder all of a sudden and grit their teeth, the way a ghost does. I couldn't stand such a thing as that, Tom. Nobody could." "Yes, but, Huck, ghosts don't travel around only at night. They won't hinder us from digging there in the daytime." "Well, that's so. But you know mighty well people don't go about that haunted house in the day nor the night." "Well, that's mostly because they don't like to go where a man's been murdered, anyway. But nothing's ever been the same around the house except in the night. Just some blue lights slipping by the windows. No regular ghosts. Well, where you see one of them blue lights flickering around, Tom, you can bet there's a ghost mighty close behind it. It stands to reason. Because you know that they don't anybody but ghosts use 'em." "Yes, that's so. But anyway, they don't come around in the daytime. So what's the use of our being afeard?" "Well, all right. We'll tackle the haunted house if you say so, but I reckon it's taking chances." They had started down the hill by this time. There in the middle of the moonlight valley below them stood the haunted house, utterly isolated. Its fences gone long ago, rank weeds smothering the very doorstep. The chimney crumbled to ruin, the window sashes vacant, a corner of the roof caved in. The boys gazed a while, half expecting to see a blue light flit past a window. Then, talking in a low tone as befitted the time and circumstances, they struck far off to the right, to give the haunted house a wide berth, and took their way homeward through the woods that adorned the rearward side of Cardiff Hill. Chapter 16. About noon the next day, the boys arrived at the dead tree. They had come for their tools. Tom was impatient to go to the haunted house. Huck was measurably so, but suddenly said, "Looky here, Tom. Do you know what day it is?" Tom mentally ran over the days of the week, and then quickly lifted his eyes with a startled look in them. "My, I never once thought of it, Huck." "Well, I didn't neither, but all at once it popped onto me that it was Friday. Blame it. A body can't be too careful, Huck. We might have got into an awful scrape, tackling such a thing on a Friday." "Might? Better say we would. There's some lucky days, maybe, but Friday ain't. Any fool knows that. I don't reckon you was the first that found it out, Huck. Well, I never said I was, did I? And Friday ain't all, neither. I had a rotten bad dream last night. Dreamt about rats." "No? Sure sign of trouble. Did they fight?" "No." "Well, that's good luck, Huck. That's good, Huck. When they don't fight, it's only a sign that there's trouble around, you know. All we got to do is look mighty sharp and keep out of it. We'll drop this thing for today and play. Do you know Robin Hood, Huck?" "No. Who's Robin Hood?" "Why, he was one of the greatest men that was ever in England, and the best. He was a robber." "Cracky. I wished I was." "Who did he rob?" "Only sheriffs and bishops and rich people and kings, and such like. But he never bothered the poor. He loved 'em. He always divided up with 'em perfectly square." "Well, he must have been a brick." "I bet you he was, Huck. Oh, he was the noblest man that ever was. They ain't any such men now, I can tell you. He could lick any man in England with one hand tied behind him, and he could take his yew bow and plug a 10-cent piece every time, a mile and a half." "What's a yew bow?" "I don't know. It's some kind of a bow, of course. And if he hit that dime only on the edge, he would set down and cry and curse. But we'll play Robin Hood. It's nobby fun. I'll learn you." "I'm agreed." So they played Robin Hood all the afternoon, now and then casting a yearning eye upon the haunted house, and passing a remark about the morrow's prospects and possibilities there. As the sun began to sink into the west, they took their homeward athwart the long shadows of the trees and soon were buried from sight in the forests of Cardiff Hill. On Saturday, shortly after noon, the boys were at the dead tree again. They had a smoke and a chat in the shade, and then dug a little in their last hole, not with great hope, but merely because Tom said there were so many cases where people had given up a treasure after getting down within 6 inches of it, and then somebody else had come along and turned it up with a single thrust of a shovel. The thing failed this time, however, so the boys shouldered their tools and went away feeling that they had not trifled with fortune, but it fulfilled all the requirements that belong to the business of treasure hunting. When they reached the haunted house, there was something so weird and grisly about the dead silence that reigned under the baking sun, and something so depressing about the loneliness and desolation of the place, that they were afraid for a moment to venture in. Then they crept to the door and took a trembling peep. They saw a weed-grown, floorless room, unplastered an ancient fireplace, vacant windows, a ruinous staircase, and here, there, and everywhere hung ragged and abandoned cobwebs. They presently entered softly, with quickened pulses, talking in whispers, ears alert to catch the slightest sound, and muscles tense and ready for an instant retreat. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care and thanks again.